A clear pathway to a championship, something that's never before happened for a group of 5 teams, and one of the defining teams of that, the Boise State Broncos. This is the College Game Day podcast. We are recording on Friday, June 21st. Rece Davis and Pete Thamel with you. There are a number of group of 5 contenders for one of the playoff spots, as you probably are aware by now. The 5 highest ranked conference champions will be included in the college football playoff, which by definition will take a team from the so-called group of 5. And over the years, historically, Boise State has been the team, Pete, that has sort of broken through the ceiling to a degree. You know, whether it was a Fiesta Bowl win and a perfect season against Oklahoma in 2006, 2009. They played TCU, who was also perfect going into the bowl game in a year, but never really a chance for a national championship. So it's one of those things that the paradigm has changed a bit in many ways, financially, prestige, but also there's now a realistic and defined pathway for these teams to contend for national titles.
And I think it's so good for the sport, Rece, to have 1 to 130 energized by that carrot. I really think that's something that's been missing and was a little bit farcical when you had only the 2 and the 4 spots. And, you know, I remember I covered that great Boise, Oklahoma Fiesta Bowl. And, you know, and they return 18 starters in the next, you know, they finish the year ranked 6th, and the next year they start at 21, right? Like, and it's just like that carrot was just simply not within reach for a team. And they were in the WAC back then too, which made it even harder because they just didn't have the quality on their schedule. So you look back at what Boise accomplished during that time, and it's pretty jaw dropping when you consider the wins they have, both, you know, they beat Virginia Tech, right? Open the season. They beat Georgia at one point, correct?
In Atlanta. Yeah.
And I mean, these are things that, like, you look back 20 years, and those are mind bending right now to think about Boise beating, you know, Georgia, and they beat Virginia Tech in DC when you know, Frank Beamer was in his wheelhouse at that point. They have a few other skins on the wall that I'm not going to remember off the top of my head, but obviously that Oklahoma win is one of the greatest games in the history of college football. Just with the stakes and the dynamics and the stars and the way it ended and ended again and ended again. So I just think it's a lot of fun for the sport to have a path for Cinderella.
And there are a lot of teams that would certainly fall into that category for this upcoming season. Many people like Memphis, Fresno State, Memphis, Fresno State, some like USF. There's still Tulane, even with the new coach in John Summerall. But I think that Boise State is the team that has a little bit or a lot of brand recognition and tends to draw the fans' eye there. But Boise State is in a little bit of a different spot than perhaps it has been historically. If you look back over the history of this program, they've had a number of tremendous head coaches who've moved on for one reason or another, whether it's Dirk Cutter, Houston Nutt, Dan Hawkins, Chris Peterson, Brian Harsin, a number of guys, but none of them had been relieved of their duties in an involuntary situation as Andy Avalos was. And that happened last fall, mid-season, to the Broncos. And after that, they turned the season around behind their interim coach, Spencer Danielson, 35 years old, been at Boise State for quite some time. The previous 7 seasons, about to go into his 8th and his first as the full-time head coach, started at Boise as graduate assistant, moved up. And in this November rescue of the season that Spencer Danielson led, he became the first interim head coach to lead his team to a conference championship game title. First one to do that in FBS history after the relieving of the duties for Andy Avalos. So Spencer Danielson is now the full-time head coach at Boise State, young, energetic, and trying to lead the men on the blue back to the glory that they've had in recent years. And we're delighted to have Spencer Danielson join us now on the College Game Day podcast. Spencer, after you took over in November of last season, how did it come about? How did you find out that they were making you the permanent head coach at Boise State?
Yeah, Rece, it was obviously a situation, a crazy month that I'll never forget. As a coach, you just focus on kind of what's next, right? You go from one meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting to the next practice to the next game, and then when the head coach got let go, becoming the interim head coach, things get changed really quick. You're on multi-year deals that now can become null and void. Players can leave, and so you're so focused on, okay, the things that you think you control, and then things happen. And so we go through this crazy time in my life. I'll never forget that Sunday. The head coach is let go. I'm in the interim. I speak to the team about finishing strong because that's all we could do at that point, right, Rece? We had a great group of 6-year seniors, a great group. Our whole team's a great group of young men, and I tell them about finishing strong. And then I go home, my wife's crying. She's taking pictures off the walls. Like it's just a crazy moment that I think sometimes people forget about coaches. You're going through these moments. And I go back to work on Monday the next day, and it's a testament to these coaches and these players. I mean, these coaches were, working their tail off, getting ready for the game plan for the game we played that week. Players were in here watching film. And we went on to win the rest of those games, and by the grace of God, win the Mountain West Championship game. And that's a testament to these players, these coaches, and especially, so many things pulling at them. Everything was probably pointing at them to look out for themselves, and they didn't. And that has nothing to do with me. That's a testament to these players that are here and the coaches. And so you go through all that. We win the Mountain West Championship game. And we're flying back from the Mountain West Championship game. I got my Mountain West Championship trophy or hat on. I'm carrying the Mountain West Championship trophy onto the plane. I'm with my wife. Still have no idea what's going to happen the next day. We had a bunch of our players obviously chanting certain stuff in the plane flying home. And I love, and our AD, Jeremiah Dickey, second to none. I mean, he's a 10 out of 10. But I joke with people about this story. He comes on the plane, taps my leg and says, "Really good job, man." And we didn't talk the rest of the plane flight home after the championship game, right? And but it was, it was just at a lot of peace. This is a place that I love. This is a dream job for me. I absolutely love our players and our staff. And I was so proud of them finishing that season the right way, bringing the championship back to Boise. And so knowing that whatever happened the next day, if I was going to be the permanent head coach or someone else, I trust the Lord. And I was like, "Lord, it's in your hands." We did what we needed to do. And the next day, Jeremiah called me in his office, offered me the job. It was an emotional moment for me. Obviously, I was crying. This is a dream job. I love this place because of the people. And I'll never forget I called my wife after, and she was like, "What happened? What happened?" I'm like, "Sweetie," kind of like in a low voice. And she's like, "No." And I was like, "Babe, I got the job." And it was it's an awesome moment. Some of those moments, Rece, that you'll never forget in coaching. And then, one thing turns to another. It's my brother is a fireman in Boise. He moved out here a couple years ago. Cool. Because he loves this area. And, he was obviously, my whole family was hanging on pins and needles trying to figure out what happened. And after I got, offered the job, I was, doing a lot of different things, media, and didn't get a chance to call him. And he was calling me. I didn't have my phone on me. And him and his wife were driving by the stadium, and he found out I was the head coach because my picture was on the Jumbotron. He's like, "Well, I guess Spencer got the job," so it was just a surreal moment. And give God all the glory. All the glory goes to him and our staff and our players. It's a testament to those guys. This is a dream job for me. I love these kids. I love our staff. It's a phenomenal place to live, and couldn't be more humbled and honored to be the head coach here.
I do need to know what the players were chanting, though. You said the players were chanting. Can you recreate a chant for us?
I don't know if I can right now, Rece, to be honest. I'll tell you one thing. Jeremiah was cornered a couple times on that field down in Vegas. I can tell you that. I'm going to screw a lot of different things up, but one thing that I love these young men. But it's also teaching these guys what love is. It's not rainbows and butterflies all the time. It's sacrificing for them. It's telling them the truth. And that takes time. I mean, this is going into year 8 for me at Boise State. So every player on this team, I've been able to have a part in their recruitment, so I know them. I know their families. They're not just jersey numbers to me or positions they play on the field. And so they, I care about them. I care about these young men becoming better husbands and fathers one day, because this is the greatest team sport on the planet. And being able to bring we have people on our team from Egypt, Ireland, all the way from Hawaii, California, and bringing 110, 112 young men together for a common goal. is such a beautiful thing about this game. And so I love these young men. And so, yeah, they were very passionate about, me becoming the head coach, and that's touched my heart and always will.
Spencer, you mentioned being there 8 years. You arrived in 2017 as a graduate assistant and kind of worked up step by step. Walk me through a little bit of, you went to and played at and graduated from Azusa Pacific, which is a fine institution, but probably not like an Alabama-esque incubator of players and coaches. Walk me through how you found Boise, how Boise found you, and then just sort of the natural progression from GA to position coach, coordinator, et cetera.
Yeah, Pete, great question. So Azusa Pacific is a university that almost nobody knows, depending who you're talking to. But it's a small private school down in East LA. And it's I'm born and raised in San Diego. And so it was about 2 hours away. It was NAIA when I was being recruited, transitioned to Division II in my time there. And had a great experience. It was something going into college. I wanted to go into business. I thought that's what I wanted to do. I've always kind of had a business mind, wanted to do that. So went to Azusa Pacific to play football. Loved the game. I played quarterback in high school. I was by no means the second coming of Peyton Manning. I ran around a lot, small school, high school ball, but just loved playing the game. Went to Azusa Pacific, played for Victor Santa Cruz, who I'm still close to this day, a huge mentor in my life, and had a great experience. And through my time playing at Azusa Pacific, I just, was so touched and impacted by those coaches who took time to impact me in way more ways than just how to play defense or the game of football. Is about life. And I met my wife, Rachel, at Azusa Pacific. She played volleyball there. I chased her around until she finally let me take her on a date, and just fell in love with the game. I broke my leg one year at Azusa Pacific, so I was able to get my MBA while I was playing, and I still thought I was going to get into just business. But the second I got done playing in December, I was brought on to coach at Azusa Pacific in January. And small school football, it's like, hey, we'll figure it out. We'll give you a Little Caesars pizza every day to keep things moving, And but just fell in love with the game. And it's a testament to those coaches. I mean, Victor Santa Cruz, Bo Beatty, Rudy Carl, the guys that I'm still close to this day that changed my life, and had me focus on coaching to impact players, not only for the game on Saturdays, but for life. And so fell in love with the game, started coaching there. And in small school football, you got to do a lot of things, from helping book hotel rooms to getting the equipment out. But you do it because you love the kids and you love football. And so did that for about 4 years. Was able to meet a lot of Boise State coaches that recruited the Inland Empire, which is a big, recruiting bed on the West Coast. So met Brian Harsin, met Andy Avalos, met a bunch of these coaches that would come out and recruit. And so I came out to coach a camp at Boise State one of those summers. I want to say 2015 or 16, I came out to coach a camp in Boise, one of the team camps. Boise, Idaho, or Boise State has a big high school team camp, full pads that they'll bring guest coaches out to help coach. And so that was my first time to Boise, Idaho, was coaching one of these team camps in the summertime. And met a lot of the coaches. And then in December of 2016, Coach Harsin met me at a hotel room in Rancho Cucamonga and essentially interviewed for a defensive graduate assistant job. And we talked through it there before they played their bowl game. He offered me a job to come out to Boise, Idaho as a defensive graduate assistant that winter of 2016. I'll never forget telling my wife, I was offered the defensive graduate assistant job, and I'm like, sweetie, I think we need to take this. This is where I believe God's leading us. We got to go do this. And, she started crying, and they weren't happy tears. Let me tell you that to start out, because she's a Southern California girl too. At that point, you just don't know anything about Boise, Idaho, what's out there, what is obviously the football tradition, the blue field, the success they've had football wise, but what is it going to be like to truly live there? And I told her, babe, it's going to be awesome. We're going to work a ton. I'm not going to make any money, but it's going to be great. I promise you. And we jumped in a U-Haul. We grabbed our cat, and that was all we had. And we moved out to Boise, Idaho in January 2017. And it's been an awesome journey. I mean, at that point, there were 9 full-time assistants in college football. At that point, had no idea that there was going to be a 10th full-time assistant coming out a year from then. By the grace of God, a year goes by, and Coach Harsin promotes me to a full-time position coach, coaching our studs or our outside linebackers at that point. And from that time on, just, we had some great players, great coaches always around, and was able to continually walk the path, continue to promote, because I was around great people, great players. I mean, it's one of our edge coach right now, Jabril Frazier, who's a rock star. He played for me right away. And so you're around some great players, some great young men. And so I'm a product of being around great people. It's not because I'm so great or so smart. I'm a product of being around, some great people. So I was able to promote throughout my time here. And there's just, it's crazy how college football works and how different things happen throughout, your journey that kind of bring you to where you are. So it's been an awesome ride. We love living here. We love the people in Boise, Idaho. We love our players, our staff, and it's a great place to live. So humbled and honored to be here.
What's your relationship now? You brought up Brian Harsin. What's your relationship with him now? Because I believe he's back in the area now. What's it like now?
He's a mentor of mine. I pick his brain on a lot of different things. I mean, it was awesome working for him. I mean, he gave me my first full-time job, and he's a guy to this day that that'll pick his brain. I'll see him and I'll pick his brain on football stuff. Could be leadership. If he sees something from a book to something to read, he'll send it to me. So he's a huge mentor of mine, and I've learned a ton from him, not just football wise, but life, being a head coach, how to navigate some of the different things, especially here. He's been a head coach here. He's from here. And so I pick his brain a ton. He's a huge mentor of mine. Coach Peterson's a huge mentor of mine. We Zoom a ton. He comes out to meet with me. So I try to, I know there's a million things I don't know, so many things that I'm excited to continue to grow. And I believe that's life. I tell our players that life's a journey. It's not about an endpoint. It's not about an arrival. It's about a journey. It's about a climb to where you're going. And so I love growing. I love finding better ways to do things because a lot of people out there doing things better than me. And so Coach Peterson, Coach Harsin, that's just to name a couple of guys that I pick consistently their brain on how to do things better on and off the field.
So Spencer, you get the job on that Sunday, and I think from the time you got it after that New Mexico game through the Mountain West Championship game was a sprint, like you said, right? Yeah. And you certainly had to do some recruiting and do some big things. But what was the transition like to, okay, I'm the interim head coach trying to get us wins, to all of a sudden I have to re-recruit our best players? Ashton Jeanty, you look at all your offensive linemen. Cage Casey was obviously first round All-American. Like, what is that like when you go from the tunnel of I need to win Saturday to okay, I need to run the program now. I need to solidify the roster. I need to add some pieces here and there. Walk me through that transition, because I'd imagine you were probably prepared for the week-to-week part maybe a little more than the macro part.
No, absolutely, Pete. I mean, prior to being named the permanent head coach, it was just, what's next on a daily basis. Let's get ready for the game. And that was my message to our players, because there was obviously, as you can imagine, from committed recruits to recruits that we were still recruiting to obviously more, the most important thing was our current players and their families and their parents calling me and, Spencer, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And I joke with my wife, I found new ways to say, I don't know. Right. Because you're like, working through it, but I don't know. I know we got a game this weekend, or I know we got practice later today. So you just kind of kept everybody, focused. And that was, even when I was named the interim right away, I only had about an hour before I talked with the team. And that's my main message was, fellas, we got 2 weeks. Coaches, we got 2 weeks. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for anything else. Let's finish this strong, and then we'll see what God does. We'll see what happens next. And so once you win those 2 games and win the championship game, to your point, Pete, then from that point it went, okay, now decisions have been made. I can start to make some more final decisions in regards to our players, some things that are near and dear to my heart and what to do from recruiting to our current roster. And so it was a sprint from that point. Got the job, was able to be, it was a very emotional moment when Jeremiah told our staff, this is a staff that I love and care about. And then obviously, when he told those players that I was the, full-time head coach, it was an emotional experience. And then from that point on, you'd find out we're playing in the LA Bowl. So you're planning for a bowl game. Then we make sure we get our players committed, the ones that are committed, make sure they stayed committed. We had a couple recruits commit to us while I was the interim, which was a new experience for me, because I'm telling their parents, like, hey, I love your son. I know we'll develop your son, but this thing could go a couple different ways. And so just navigating some of that stuff with our current recruits. So then we immediately, for a couple days, was really just focused on our current roster. So instead of going out recruiting, I'm all about our players here. We're a developmental program. And so it's focused on our players here, keeping them here, painting the picture for them on this is the best place for them to stay, develop, play in the NFL, be the best version of themselves. And so focused on that for, 3-4 days. And then for the last couple of days, went out to see a couple of our commits, see their families, and make sure reiterated the picture of what we're going to do going forward and how this is the best place for them. And then came back, had a couple practices, and then flew out to LA for our bowl game. So drinking out of a fire hose for a little bit, and then you get back from the bowl game, signing days, the Wednesday after our bowl game. So you get through signing day. Obviously, the transfer portal is still wide open, and so it's recruiting your players. But I'll relate to this. You're always recruiting your current roster, and not recruiting in regards to selling them on stuff. It's you continually building the trust. And that's what I tell our staff, like, that's our job, and everything we do is to build the trust for our players so they know there's no better place to play, thrive, and be developed than here. And that starts with finding the right players that want to be grown and developed in all phases and want to be elite in everything they do, and then us being consistent with doing that. So it was a lot going on, and a very busy time. Christmas was great with my I have two little girls, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so it was making sure we had the carrots nibbled on and the cookies eaten to make sure we still believe in Santa. And then there were still a couple calls to make on Christmas. But my wife Rachel's a rock star, and so it was an awesome time as much as it was crazy.
What do you mean? What is this believe in Santa? Santa's real?
It absolutely is, Rece. I can promise you. There's a number I can send you that we call every day in the summer where you could talk to a Santa Claus. So get your mind right. Oh yeah, we're gonna let this thing go as long as hopefully till 15 years old is my goal for Eleanor.
Does that number help expedite nap time? Because I might be interested in a shared contact if it is.
You say, hey Teddy, if you go to sleep, we'll call Santa again when you get up. You're ready.
One guy that you have your entire staff at Boise has developed beautifully is Ashton Jeanty. I think combined had over 1,900 yards from scrimmage last year, and at least one of the metric services say that he led the nation in forced missed tackles. I know you're the head coach now, but as a defensive guy, what's the best description of dealing with him when he runs for a defender?
Yeah, Ashton, I mean, I can be here all day talking about Ashton because not only obviously everybody sees on the field during games what he does, but what is missed before I even talk about that is he is one of the hardest workers that I have ever been around. I mean, and that is since he came on campus as a freshman. Even this offseason with, there's a ton of pubs, there's a ton of different things that are pulling out. I mean, he deserves every single bit of it, but there's not a guy in this locker room that's outworking Ashton Jeanty. And not only outworking, but also holding the standard here. Like there's a ton of tradition at Boise State. Success is the standard here, and Ashton Jeanty holds that standard from meetings to workouts. If someone's not doing what they're supposed to, it's not going to be me or a coach jumping on them right away. It's probably going to be Ashton or one of our leaders, and that's a testament to our team. But Ashton Jeanty, the player people see on Saturday nights or whenever we play, he's an even better young man off the field. I mean, he's a 10 out of 10. So I gotta start with at least saying that. But defending Ashton, and I'll never forget, even when he came here, true freshman, early enrollee, and I mean, he is that type of back that even before anybody in the country knew about him, I mean, he was giving our defense absolute fits. I mean, he was a grown man when he stepped on campus. And not only can he make you miss in a phone booth, he could also go through you, which is a very elite skill set. So not only as a defender, you got to be ready to deal with him going through you and the power he can create, but he can also make you miss and run by you. And I always think that as a running back is the most tough to deal with as a defender or a defense, because you've got to create a lot of situations to where you better have a leverage on all points of the run game. And also for Ashton, he could catch the ball really well in the backfield. So not only is it him getting the ball handoff wise, it's the screen game, it's getting him the ball in space, it's putting him on the perimeter and empty. So he creates a lot of stress for defenses and defenders, but he's got an elite skill set that, once again, he can go through you, but you better get your mind right as well, because he could also go around you. And he's a guy that trains at a relentless level every day, and he's earned everything that he's gotten to this point.
Spencer, I would say that Ashton's probably the most important recruit for any Group of 5 program in the country, because he probably could have got close to 7 figures if he had decided to leave. You look at like Damian Martinez, who left Oregon State to go there. What was the re-recruitment like, and what was the pitch to him? But I would also think it also says something about him that he saw that he had success, saw that he had a good O-line, and wanted to keep that rolling.
No, absolutely. So much for Ashton. And this is, I mean, there's obviously Ashton Jeanty is a phenomenal football player, one of the biggest leaders that I've been around, workers. And we got a decent amount of guys in our team that same thing have been dealing with different schools wanting them to get in the portal, contacting their parents, contacting coaches for them to leave, and they didn't. And that's a testament to our players. That's a testament to our coaches continuing to paint the picture that this is the best place for them to stay and develop. And so for Ashton, at the end of the season, obviously he's getting an influx of people contacting him, from him to his parents. And this is a young man that first and foremost, he wanted to be here. There was never any point in time where, Coach, I don't want to be here. What can you do for me? And all these different things, which that wouldn't even, I'm not even saying if he said that would be wrong, but there was none of that. He wanted to be here. There was a bunch of supporters that stepped up to help him, but he could have left and made more money than he's making here and all that. But he wanted to be here. This place is home for Ashton. He knows how he's going to be developed and grown here for the NFL, which is his goal. And he wanted to be here. And so it was for us as coaches continue to paint the picture of how he's going to be used consistently, how he's going to be developed for the next level, how we're going to develop as a team, how we're going to highlight him because he deserves that. But also a situation where, Boise State football in the state of Idaho is a huge deal. And so for him, the community stepped up in a major way, not just financially, but for support. And for Ashton, he knows that when his time's done here, he goes to the NFL. This is going to be a place they'd always be able to call home. If that means this is his permanent home or if it's just a place that he visits and is near and dear to his heart, this community is important to Ashton, and they have opened their arms to him since he's been there, and he knows that. So he's a young man that wanted to be here. He knew this was the best place for him to grow and develop. And I'm so thankful for our supporters, our community continue to step up to help him. But it's a testament to him, his family, keeping him focused, keeping him locked in to know this is the best place for him.
Spencer, historically, Boise State has thrived as the outsider. 2006, and really, I guess, establishing itself as being able to not only play with the big boys, but knock them out, beating Oklahoma in the famed Fiesta Bowl, the perfect season in 2009. But in those 2 years, there wasn't a realistic path to the national championship. Now, there may have been people who argued that there should have been and all of that. But now there's an actual path. There's a largely defined path for Boise State and others in that realm to compete for a championship. Understanding there's still, some significant gaps in financial resources overall as a program. What's the impact on Boise State now that you win the Mountain West, you get into the playoff, and now you're on the field with a chance to win the national championship, and you don't have to worry about necessarily strength of schedule? And I realize, you could be contending with some other group of 5 champion and all of that. But generally speaking, you don't have to worry about those things that held back some of those undefeated Boise teams from, 15, 20 years ago. What impact is that having on your program?
Rece, that's a great question because that's a huge deal for us. And I completely agree with you. There's been quite a few years here from undefeated seasons to these great seasons where you play and win Fiesta Bowls, to Oklahoma, to TCU, when we beat Arizona. But there was never as many opportunities, or it didn't seem like there was as many opportunities to go play for a national champion. And as a competitor, as a university, as a coach, all you can ask for is a shot. Then you got to go do it on the field. We got to go earn it every single day. But now with the expanded college football playoff to 12 teams, you got a shot. And that's what I tell our team. Obviously, that's not something we talk about a ton because we got to make sure we handle June 21st the best, right? We got workouts starting here in about an hour. We got to handle today, or what happens weeks, months from now ain't going to matter. We got to win today, but you got a shot now. And that's no different for our current players to recruits is, hey, you come here, you got to earn everything you get, but you got a shot to now make the college football playoff. We got to go handle business. But as a competitor, as a football player, as a football coach, as a community, you now have a shot at that, which is a huge deal. And so it's an awesome thing for our community. Obviously, it's an awesome thing for our players. And it's something that I know they think about, they talk about. Now we got to go put the work in. We got to go recruit the right guys. We got to make sure we train our players and develop them and be on the cutting edge, offensive, defensively, and special teams wise. But now you got a shot. And as a program, as the head football coach here, that's something that I'm very excited for our team. Now we got to go earn it.
Well, to have a shot, Spencer, you need to have a quarterback, right? And I think to do that, Obviously the preseason magazines are focused on Malachi Nelson. He was ESPN's #1 recruit. He's a 5-star. He was at USC. His transfer to Boise was sort of one of the bigger ripples in the portal last year. But you also have Madsen, who's won you a lot of football games, has been a consummate locker room guy. Walk me through what you've seen from Malachi so far and what you expect that battle to be like. I feel like Maddox missed this spring, correct?
Yes.
With injury. So you're going to have a competition in August. Walk us through that and maybe walk us through a little glimpse of what Malachi showed you with that skill set this spring.
Yeah, Malachi Nelson's a phenomenal young man. It was awesome to get to know him and his dad, Eric. In December, obviously, we get done with the bowl game. We're recruiting a quarterback. There's a couple different guys we were talking through. We did a lot of research. And I'll never forget my first conversation with Malachi and his dad, Eric. And I just, was very blunt with them and painted the picture about Boise State, what we're looking for, the competition that would be there, how hard it's going to be, how we develop, and went through the line, not trying to recruit him, but just being very honest with Malachi is that this is us. So if you do come here, you're going to know exactly what it is. And we're all about developing people and making them the best football players and young men, and going through this process, not knowing how it was going to go, but at least knowing that this is us. And, after that first conversation, Malachi lit up. He's like, Coach, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want. I want to go somewhere and compete and earn and be a community where, football is a huge deal. And so it's been awesome to get him here. Obviously, he was the only quarterback in our quarterback room that had to learn a completely new offense. We're a pro style offense, different than what he came from. And so it took him a lot to just learn a new offense. And he did a great job. I mean, he's a young man that loves football, wants to be elite, and actually puts the actions in to be elite. And he had a really good spring. And you could tell the arm talent. It's also something I tell you, he's a redshirt freshman. And I think sometimes as football players, and obviously who he was coming out of high school and deserved, all the stars and everything he got, he's deserved it. But he's a redshirt freshman. And so it's been awesome to see him grow and develop. Even his body since he came to Boise State, he's stronger, he's faster. His body's developed. Obviously, football-wise, he's got a big-time arm talent. But now he's developed, even in the 6 months he's been here, to understand our schemes, understand the different checks and reads. And Coach Cutter, obviously NFL head coach, NFL offensive coordinator, was the head coach here. He is a quarterback guy. And having Dirk Cutter be here as our offensive coordinator and quarterback coach was paramount to me for not only running our entire offense and being an explosive scoring offense, but it was also quarterback development. Because that's near and dear to my heart. Obviously, it's a position that you have to be on point with. And our whole team hangs in the balance on the decisions that quarterback makes. And so him developing our quarterbacks through the spring was awesome. Madsen, I think the world of. He got injured last year against Fresno State, hurt his knee. And so, he was banged up, so that he was able to do a little bit of 7-on-7 in spring, but no team. And so now going into summertime, we're going to have competition through the roof. And that's what I've told Malachi, Maddux, and those two young men can't wait to compete. And as a competitor, that's all you want is a shot. All you want is, Coach, everything's going to be broken down. We're going to grade everything from even summer workouts to how we're handling these things. We can do a little bit of football in the summertime. And then obviously as we transition to fall camp, competition will be through the roof. And the quarterback that gives us the best shot to win games is going to be the starter game one. But I think the world of Malachi, he's been awesome to be here. He's relentless to get better. And Madsen is a phenomenal young man, a competitor through the roof. And he's a great quarterback too. So I'm excited to see both those young men compete.
If you have 5 minutes or an afternoon and you can break away from the duties of being a head football coach in Boise, Idaho, what are you doing?
Rece, that's a great question. It's funny you ask that, because I get asked that a lot, and I'm like, man, I got to find more hobbies. I don't do a lot outside of coaching football. And when I get home with my girls, I end up watching a lot of Moana and playing Tea Party, so
that counts.
Yep. And I tell people this, the beautiful thing about having young kids is when I go home, my 3-year-old and 2-year-old do not care about Boise State football. They want to make sure that the dress they have on it looks beautiful and all those things. So I would say first off, it's probably being with my girls and my wife and building to them. But I'm trying to continue to find different hobbies. I don't really golf. I'm terrible at it, and I get frustrated, and I have enough things in my day that probably get me fired up. So I don't golf much. But to be honest with you, Rece, I love just getting outside right now at Boise State, right outside our facilities, the green belt. So the river runs right through downtown. So one of my favorite things to do if I got an hour, half hour, just go on a run on the Greenbelt, get outside, be in nature, listen to a podcast. I love listening to podcasts or books on tape and just going on a run or a walk and just getting outside. So I'd say that's probably one of my favorite things to do.
Well, as a man who has, I've got a son and a daughter. When my daughter was young, I played all of the doll games and everything, and I became an expert at various voices for each individual doll. I highly recommend it if you are into that. Do you do voices? Can you do dialects?
Oh, I'm gonna try my best in everything I do. I mean, it just depends on what show our girls are watching that will change my diet. We're into Bluey right now, so I'll be going through a little bit of an Australian accent. Sometimes we're going through it, but
we got a little Bluey here in Boston now. We got a little Bluey popping up. So
Teddy's about it. So but it's awesome being able to and especially as a football coach, and you get asked a lot like work-life balance, and what we do that's not really reality. I mean, this is where I believe God's called me to do this. This is a vocation for me to impact and develop young men. It's not a job. And so I talk a lot about with our coaches about blending home with what we do here at Boise State football. So my girls are at practice all the time. Our coaches' kids are at practice all the time. My wife's here all the time because you got to blend them together. We bring players over the home a ton because it's not, okay, this is my home life, this is work, and they're separate. They can't be. And that's not why I got into this. It's to blend it together. We're all pushing these young men to grow and develop. And I want them to be around my family. I want my girls, my wife to be around our players. And I want them to continually see me in those roles. And by no means am I a perfect husband or father, but I want them to see me working at it. I want them to see that it matters to me, no different for them in life, because a lot of our players come from a completely different backgrounds from families. And I'm excited for them to be big-time husbands and fathers when they're done. That's near and dear to my heart. And so blending those two is a big deal. But when I go home, it's all systems go. I'll park in my driveway, kind of shake it out, get my mind right, because the second I open my door, I'm getting jumped on. I got to step through some Cheez-It bags or something before I walk, to the couch. Probably going to step on a doll and hurt my foot or something, but it's an awesome time.
That's tremendous. Spencer, thanks so much for spending time with us this morning. We wish you the best of luck, and hopefully, man, who knows, man, get College Game Day back on the blue. That would be tremendous.
I'm calling it right now. Can't wait to see you guys in Boise, Idaho here soon, okay? Can't wait.
Sounds great, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys so much for your time. God bless you. Love what you guys do. Thank you so much for the time.
Pete, I'd say it's fairly easy to see why, for the most part, a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, the talent was retained after Spencer Danielson got the job on a full-time basis.
Yeah, you can see, his energy pop through our Zoom screen here as we were taping the pod, Rece, and you can see the intentionality of connection that Spencer Danielson has. And that's easy to imagine that permeating through a football building, permeating through a roster, the long snapper feeling as valued as Ashton Jeanty. So he's been an energy bolt for that place. Just really a shock of positivity through there. It's translated to the recruiting trail. It's translated to the portal, and it'll be a lot of fun to see what he can do with some of the talent they have back. They basically have 4.5 returning starting offensive linemen, and they have, the best tailback, one of the 3 best tailbacks in the entire country, period, and some really intriguing options at quarterback too. So, in a very good defense, by the way, we should not overlook that. And he mentioned Dirk Cutter quick. We didn't get to ask him about Cutter, but boy, what a good hire that is. If you are a young, inexperienced head coach, to have a former head coach at your school, a former, a QB guru as you're a defensive guy, and then to have a guy who's coached in the NFL and you can sell on the recruiting trail. Hey, come learn from someone who has coached NFL quarterbacks. It's a pretty compelling sell. So a lot of things have really lined up for Boise this year. They do go to Oregon week 2, I want to say.
That's right. That's correct.
And I think they start the season at Georgia Southern. So that's certainly not a picnic to go down to Statesboro there. Washington State comes to their place. Oregon State closes the season at their place on Black Friday, I believe at 10 a.m. local start. It'll be a lot of fun to see. I really feel like this new format energizes the group of 5.
Hmm. Well, here's the thing now, to be clear, the Washington State and Oregon State games won't count in the Mountain West standings. And Boise State is one of the teams that draw both on the schedule as non-conference games in the Mountain West. So how this could come into play in terms of being one of the five highest ranked conference champions, should Boise State win a conference championship, is the overall record. So you need to win those games too. So those will be important as well, because there are a number of Mountain West teams who miss one of those teams, or perhaps miss both of them. I would have to dive into the schedule and see if there's anyone who actually misses both, but there are several who miss one or the other. So with all of that in mind, and with the other group of five contenders right now, mid to late June, just off the longest day of the year, I think. Are you buying Boise State to make the playoff? Is that your pick?
They're the favorite. I think they're the favorite. I would say them and Memphis. I think Toledo will be very good again. Remember, it would have been Liberty last year, right? So, yeah, I think that those two probably have the have the best path, but I think that debate will be a fun debate, Rece, as we go on. I'll be curious what Tulane happens. They have Ty Thompson, they have Mario Williams. I have a lot of belief in John Sumrall as a head coach, so I'm not going to completely cast them aside right now, but it'd be a lot of fun. One note on the Mountain West: if you game out the last 10 years of the of the CFP, different alphabet soup, only one Mountain West champion would have been the highest ranked conference champion. Now, that I think says a little bit about the competition in the Mountain West too, where those guys are beating each other up a little bit. So
yeah. Well, you mentioned Tulane. Is Tulane going to be able to hoist the cheap beer to celebrate it and getting there? Because they're going back and forth with Louisiana, formerly known as Louisiana Lafayette, over the quality and price and size of beverages offered at their games.
If the college football gods could have given us a perfect story for June 20-something, I do think it would be a who has the cheapest beer in the state of Louisiana argument in college football. Like this is I guess it's not manna from heaven, it's hops from heaven, right? ULL went beautifully petty on social media. UL went beautifully petty on social media by correcting Tulane, saying their $2 Natty Light cans are actually the cheapest beer in college football. Now, this is my challenge to Tulane. And I think by the time people are listening to this podcast, they would have responded. A lot of Tulane's boosters, Rece, I've learned over the years, are liquor distributors.
Oh, really?
Yes. So, at K-State, you have farmers as your, as at Stanford, it's venture capital
gurus,
folks
and
people who live in Menlo Park and make a lot of money. Tulane, the local industry is driven around liquor. So,
well, that's not surprising given the neighborhood.
Correct.
Garden District, a little different from the Quarter, but still.
Correct. Yeah. That is certainly one of the tourist attractions in the city of New Orleans. A fine city with great food and great culture, but people do go there and have a beverage occasionally. So I don't think Tulane should get undercut here, Rece. That's all I'm saying. Is if I was one of those very wealthy liquor distributors who was a booster, I'm not losing this social media battle to UL for their $2 Natty Light cans. And I think the fans are the winners here. So I want people to not be undersold.
And you look at Boise State and you can do both. You can do the Natty Lights and you can do the fancy microbrews, which sort of, I think that captures the essence of Boise. And this coming from an admitted non-beer guy. I don't, I drink very little, if any, beer, and it all kind of tastes the same to me, probably because I'm not a connoisseur. I've
drank a lot of it over the years, less in recent years because of just my aging body can't hold it and metabolize it like it used to. But I like all kinds. I drank cheap beer in college. I like a good micro beer, and in the summer when it gets warm up in New England, I might have a few maybe from Cisco or something. But unfortunately, the days of the consumption that will happen in the UL stands during Sunbelt play, those days are over.
And it seems from observation, it seems to hit the fans quickly when the temperatures are high too.
Yes.
Which
yes.
can happen in the early part in Louisiana. So with that seems to be a good place to wrap this up. Thanks to Spencer Danielson for joining us. And I guess maybe the best thing to say in this mid-June weekend to you, thanks for listening to the College Game Day podcast. Download wherever you prefer to get your podcast or subscribe. Cheers and bottoms up.